It's Mrs. Feathers. I'm going to go over your grammar practice pages with you for the week. This week you are assigned pages 16 through 19, and we will be focusing on clauses and complex sentences. Your first page is page 16, and the box at the top states that a clause is a group of words that has a subject and a verb. An independent clause can stand alone as a sentence, but a dependent clause cannot. Think about those words. The word independent means that something is self-sufficient. They can be alone, just like an independent clause can stand alone as a sentence. When you are dependent, it means that you depend on others for survival. So just like a dependent clause cannot be a sentence on its own, it relies on an independent clause. A dependent clause usually begins with a subordinating conjunction, and some examples are before, when, or because. You're going to want to use this box as kind of like a word bank so that you have these subordinating conjunctions to look at. The directions state to read each clause. On the lines provided, write I if the clause is independent and can stand alone as a sentence, or write D if it is dependent and cannot. If it is a dependent clause, you are underlining the subordinating conjunction. Let's take a look at number 1. Number 1 says, she got a perfect score. I do not see any subordinating conjunctions. I see a complete subject and a complete predicate. Therefore, this sentence is independent and could be a sentence on its own. Number 2, however, says, because she was so smart. This is a dependent clause because it cannot be a sentence on its own. I need to underline because it is my subordinating conjunction. I can remind myself of them from the box above, and I need to put a D on the line. You will continue these directions for numbers 3 through 10. Your next page is page 17, and on this page we're looking at complex sentences. The first bullet point is just a review from the previous page. And then the next one says a complex sentence includes an independent clause and one or more dependent clauses. The subordinating conjunctions who, whose, whom, which, and that are relative pronouns. The subordinating conjunctions where, when, and why are relative adverbs. Again, you're going to want to use this box as kind of like a bank to reference. The directions say to read each sentence and circle the subordinating conjunction. Based on the conjunction, write relative pronoun or relative adverb on the line provided. I am fine with you abbreviating, so for relative pronoun, you could put RP, and for relative adverb, you could put RA. Number 1 says, call me when you arrive. I notice the word when is my subordinating conjunction, so I'm going to circle when. And using my box at the top, I notice when is a relative adverb. So I'm going to put RA on the line. Number 2 says, this is Harry, whom I met yesterday. Whom is my subordinating conjunction. And from the box at the top, I notice whom is a relative pronoun. So I'll put RP on the line for number 2. You will need to continue the directions to complete this page for numbers 3 through 10. Your next page is page 18. And we are going to be practicing punctuating complex sentences. The box at the top says, when an independent clause begins a complex sentence, it is usually not followed by a comma. When a dependent clause begins a complex sentence, it is usually followed by a comma. I like to use these little abbreviations. So if a sentence is independent, then dependent, no comma is needed. If a sentence is dependent, then independent, a comma is needed. On this page, we are going to read each sentence and decide if a clause needs a comma. If it does, we will rewrite the sentence correctly on the line. If it does not, we will write no change needed. Number 1 says, when I get up in the morning, I am hungry. I notice that this sentence begins with a subordinating conjunction when. Therefore, this is a DI sentence or dependent independent. Using my little abbreviation, I notice that I need a comma here. So when I get up in the morning is dependent, so I need to separate with a comma. I am hungry. Let's also take a look at number 3. Number 3 says, Camille closes her eyes before going underwater. I notice that my sentence starts with Camille. Therefore, it is not dependent because my subordinating conjunction comes later in the sentence with the word before. For this one, I'm going to write no change needed because this is an ID sentence, so no comma is needed. You will need to go back to number 2 and then complete 4 through 6 as well. Your last page, as always, is a proofreading page. The box at the top reminds us of all the directions and rules from the previous 3 pages. And then I also threw on here these abbreviations again. They really help me. ID sentences, no comma. DI sentences, you do need a comma. You're going to rewrite the sentences below, adding commas and correcting mistakes in punctuation. Number 1 says, because of the wind, did the power lines come down? I notice that this starts with a subordinating conjunction, because. So this is an example of a DI sentence, so I need a comma separating my dependent and independent clauses. Also, I notice that this is a question, so I need to change my end mark from a period to a question mark. Because of the wind is dependent, comma, did the power lines come down? Question mark. Let's also take a look at number 2. I was 4 years old when my brother was born. I notice that my sentence does not start with a subordinating conjunction. It starts with a subject I, and the clause I was 4 years old is a independent clause. So because this sentence is an ID, independent, dependent, I do not need a comma. I need to rewrite taking out the comma. You will continue proofreading for 3 through 6. As always, if you have any questions, please feel to reach out to one of the reading teachers. After you complete these pages on Thursday, your grammar quiz will be posted on Google Classroom. Have a great day, 4th grade.